In a video I made back in August, I talked about one of the most evil drivers in NASCAR. In the beginning of the episode, I mentioned that a driver could damage their reputation and credibility. There are many drivers who have done this outside the track, and I need to decide which driver fit this statement the best. This is where I showed a photo of Jeremy Mayfield, a driver that was a part of the sport for over a decade in the late 90s throughout the 2000s. Jeremy Mayfield had a lot of talent and fans that have backed him up from the beginning to the bitter end, a fact that was quickly brought to my attention after I posted the video. I remember watching Jeremy Mayfield race in the Cup Series from the time he was with Evernham Motorsports all the way to 2009 when he was running his own team out of his own pocket. His career ended abruptly after a positive drug test would lead to one of the craziest stories at the turn of the millennium in the NASCAR racing world. Many drivers were able to bounce back from such controversies, however, Jeremy Mayfield was not one of those drivers. Why was that the case? Was it due to the fact of what he failed for? Maybe it could have been the constant problems he had with his owners, or perhaps others were jealous of his performance at such a young age. Regardless of what the main circumstances were, there is one category that summarizes Mayfield the best, and that is a rebel. But what kind of rebel was he? One that followed the moral law, or one out of his own selfish wants? Well, in today's video, we will look at one of the biggest rebels in the sport of NASCAR. This is the story of Jeremy Mayfield. The story of Jeremy Mayfield in the sport of NASCAR is a fascinating one, and one that should start at the very beginning of his racing career. Mayfield was born in Owensboro, Kentucky, and had a knack for racing at a very young age, more specifically at short tracks. In fact, it would be the short tracks that would eventually give Mayfield the chance to compete in NASCAR's top division. At the age of 19 in 1987, Jeremy Mayfield moved to Nashville, Tennessee to work for a team called Sadler Brothers Racing, a very small and under-budgeted team that only raced a handful of races in the late 80s and early 90s, but also gave opportunities for drivers like Sterling Marlin and Davey Allison to run their first races in the Cup and Xfinity Series. Jeremy Mayfield started out as a fabricator, but quickly moved up the ranks as the crew chief and shop leader. Jeremy Mayfield was clearly an asset for the team in the position he was in. However, Mayfield made it clear to Earl Sadler Sr. that he eventually wanted to drive a few races for the team. That opportunity came thanks to a sponsorship opportunity from Texaco in the late model series, where he won multiple races, including the Rookie of the Year at Kentucky Motor Speedway. Sadler Brothers Racing saw potential in the driver and moved him quickly through the ranks.
Now, is there anyone out there who wants to go fast? Anybody?
I want to go fast.
In 1993, Sadler Brothers Racing would run full-time in the ARCA Menard Series with Jeremy Mayfield behind the wheel. The team saw a victory, 8 top 5 finishes, and a 4th place finish in the championship standings in only their rookie season. Mayfield wanted to stay one more year down the ARCA Series to win a championship. However, the Tennessee owner had his eyes on the Cup Series in 1994. Jeremy Mayfield made his Cup Series debut at Charlotte Motor Speedway in '93 and ran his first ever Daytona 500 in '94. The team quickly lost momentum early in the season as they were still severely under budget and missed 4 of the first 7 races. This spelled trouble for Earl Sadler's team, as many in the garage area recognized Mayfield's potential in the Cup Series after some impressive qualifying runs at both Richmond Raceway and North Wilkesboro Speedway. Teams like Taylor Racing and even Cal Yarborough Motorsports would tap the Kentucky driver to race in their equipment between the 1994 and 96 season. Cal Yarborough Motorsports provided Mayfield a good foundation to learn the ropes in the Cup Series. However, if Mayfield was ever able to get into victory lane, he needed to be with a team that had strong potentials and ties to some bigger teams. That opportunity came at the end of the 96 season, as Mayfield would be traded to Cranefist Haas Racing to drive the number 37.
That will make Jeremy Mayfield the race leader, and this will be the first time he has led at Pocono, first time he has led in 1997. Jeremy hasn't led a race since Darlington of Labor Day of a year ago, so what a super series of runs.
Mike Cranefist and Carl Haas's team was not one of the strongest teams in the mid-90s, however, it still led to Mayfield's best season up to that point. In 1997, Jeremy Mayfield would be able to score 8 top 10 finishes as well as 3 top 5 finishes, leading to a 13th place finish in the points standings. The year was impressive in itself, but the team experienced drastic changes internally as Carl Haas sold his portion of his team to his longtime buddy, Roger Penske, forming the iconic 2 and 12 team of Penske Racing that NASCAR sees to this very day. Jeremy Mayfield would be the driver for the 12 car, and the 1989 champion Rusty Wallace remained in the number 2 car. If there was ever an opportunity for Mayfield to wind up in victory lane in the Cup Series, this was going to be his best opportunity, and he was going to make the most of it.
Oh, my, Jeremy Mayfield saw the opening and he's gone. Jeremy Mayfield saw the opening.
Leader of the race is Jeremy Mayfield.
Career pole for Jeremy Mayfield, who's second in the points.
It has taken him 125 times. We've got a new first-time winner in NASCAR Winston Cup Racing. Jeremy Mayfield wins at Pocono.
The first half of the 1998 season could not have started any better for the young Kentucky driver, as he was the points leader after 14 races. In those 14 races, he was able to finish in the top 5 8 different times. His breakout race would be the Pocono 500, as Mayfield led 122 laps en route to his first victory in the series. He was able to beat the likes of Jeff Burton, Dale Jarrett, Mark Martin, and even Jeff Gordon. People expected Jeremy Mayfield to not only collect more victories throughout the rest of the 1998 season, but also keep in striking distance of the Cup Series championship. But as great as the first half was for Jeremy Mayfield, he would only wind up finishing 7th in the point standings. A top 10 performance, yes, but definitely a step down from what was seen at the beginning of the season. What could have caused the drastic shift in performance? Was it just bad luck? Or was there a tension that was starting to brew inside the Penske camp? See, after the alliance between Mike Cranfis and Roger Penske was made at the end of 1997, both cars ran under the same banner. However, the 12 and 2 never acted like they were teammates. During the time Mayfield was in the number 12 car, it was clear who the A driver was going to be and who would be the one to feed information. Rusty Wallace wanted to be the fastest one in the group and didn't want to share any info with the number 12 car. This created a tension between the two drivers, a tension that lasted throughout Mayfield's time with the team. Jeremy Mayfield did not want to be the feeder for the organization and knew that the members of the Cranfis team were deserving of more victories and opportunities. This made him rebel against Rusty Wallace's thoughts on how the team should operate and refuse to tell him what advantages the 12 team would have in each race, a move that upset the future Hall of Famer. However, he was not going to be the only one that Mayfield would upset while with Penske. In the 2000 Pocono race, Jeremy Mayfield would be in a fierce battle with the 7-time champion of Dale Earnhardt Sr., a driver that he looked up to throughout his entire career. Jeremy Mayfield's team made a pit strategy call that would put himself in front of the field behind Dale Earnhardt. In the final laps, it looked like Dale Sr. was going to be able to collect another victory in his legendary career. Nobody expected Jeremy Mayfield to do the unthinkable and bump the Intimidator out of the way to win his second race in Pocono. Every straight-edge driver knew that messing with Earnhardt was a bad idea. Well, as the NASCAR world would quickly find out, a rebel sometimes doesn't do what most would be expected to do.
He's got to go. He nudges him out of the way. Earnhardt goes high. Mayfield is going to win here at Pocono. Oh, my.
Boy, oh, boy, let me tell you, when you live by the sword, you die by the sword. I've watched Earnhardt do that on many, many races. Coming out of the last corner, just touch a person enough to get him out wide.
In the final turn in the Pocono race, Jeremy Mayfield pulled a page out of Earnhardt's book and bumped him out of the way en route to another victory. Dale Earnhardt nor the fans were happy about the situation, as Earnhardt flipped Mayfield the bird and the fans littered the track with debris as Mayfield did burnouts in front of him. At this point, the heat was already on the 3-time winner of the series. There should be no other way that he will make this situation worse while in victory lane.
Past Darrell Walter, now it was Earnhardt. I didn't have anything for him, he just slowed up a little bit in the tone turn. And I got a run on him and didn't mean to hit him or anything, just want to, like I said, rattle his cage a little bit.
And I believe that he did rattle his cage a little, guys.
This interview is still remembered to this day by many in the NASCAR racing world. It showed one of the very few times a driver was willing to give Earnhardt a taste of his own medicine. Not many people had the courage to knock Dale Sr. out of the way for a victory in a race, but Jeremy was not going to follow in line with everyone else in the sport. Mayfield was selfish when he wanted to be, and it was a trait that both helped him and was his downfall.
Yesterday in practice, Jeremy's car slid in oil to the third turn concrete. He suffered a concussion, was not medically cleared to drive. Petty will go to the tail of the field before the green flag drops.
In the first weekend of August in 2000, Jeremy Mayfield suffered a concussion from a practice crash at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The incident sidelined him for 2 races, missing both the Brickyard 400 and the race at Watkins Glen. He returned to the Michigan race in late August, but the concussion had a long impact on the driver as he finished most of his final races 29th or worse in 2000. This led to self-doubt from Penske on his driver, a doubt that was aided by a frustrated Rusty Wallace. When 2001 rolled around, Mike Cranfist sold what remaining assets he had to the team with Roger Penske, meaning that whatever was left of the 37 team was all but gone. Mayfield knew that this was bad news for all the members in the 12 camp, as the team worked separately from the rest of the Penske organization. This resulted in Mayfield standing his ground against Roger Penske, refusing to bend to any of Penske's changes that he wanted for the team, a stubbornness that was appreciated by many, but a move that would result in his termination with the team in the middle of the 2001 season, a decision that he regrets to this very day. Jeremy Mayfield moved on to the next chapter of his career in 2002 and signed with Evernham Motorsports to drive Ray Evernham's number 19 machine. The move was beneficial for both owner and driver, as Mayfield no longer had to deal with tension with his teammate, and Evernham would have a driver that could help him on the shop end to be more competitive. The first 2 seasons were a bit rough for Mayfield and the number 19 team, as they were only able to finish 26th and 19th in the championship standings. Jeremy Mayfield stated that the team was still playing catch-up with the rest of the series at the time, which resulted in the early struggles for the team. However, 2004 was going to be a different story for the number 19 team, as Bill Elliott in the number 9 car would be cut back to a part-time schedule. This meant that Ray Evernham needed a new A driver for the team, and that was going to be Jeremy Mayfield.
Getting passed by a few cars. Here comes Jeremy Mayfield. He wins the Chevy Rock and Roll 400 and into the chase for the next outcome.
Jeremy Mayfield's results would exceptionally improve as the 19 team received victories in both the 2004 and 2005 season, as well as qualified for the race for the chase for both seasons. 2004 was mostly special, as they had to not only win the final race of the regular season in order to make it into the championship playoffs, but also lead the most laps in the race. The team was able to win that night, leading 151 laps, 57 more laps than any other competitor. Evernham Motorsports was starting to prove to everyone that they were capable enough to compete with the big dogs. With a strong prospect in Casey Kane, the veteran of Jeremy Mayfield, and the legendary leader of Ray Evernham, it seemed like no one had any doubt on this team succeeding, but unfortunately there was one person who did. Someone in this group of 3, and it was Ray Evernham. As time went by with the team, Ray Evernham was starting to struggle with the love of being an owner. The champion crew chief knew how to run a team, but running a team is way different from running a company. Evernham started to believe that he would never truly have the best in the business, a thought process that led to a massive downfall in the organization. The 2006 season rolled around and things had completely shifted in the Evernham Motorsports shop as they expanded to a 3-car team. The team would have 3 full-time drivers, Casey Kane in the 9 car, Jeremy Mayfield in the 19 car, and rookie Scott Riggs in the number 10. Ray Evernham thought it would be best to make Casey Kane the new A driver for the team, giving him all the members from the playoff contending number 19 team from 2004 and 2005. This left Jeremy Mayfield with not the number 9 team from last year, as the team worked with Scott Riggs, but the part-time research team that Bill Elliott ran in only a handful of races in 04 and 05. This infuriated Mayfield, as his performance would drastically decline in the Cup Series with 0 top 10s in the first 20 races. Meanwhile, Casey King was scoring win after win with Mayfield's old team, as they were poised to be championship contenders for the 2006 season. Mayfield wanted to vent his frustrations to Ray Evernham, but Evernham was checked out at this point with his Cup Series team and focused on his developmental driver in Aaron Crocker, a relationship that many were questioning around in the shop. Jeremy Mayfield knew that something was going on between the two and tried his best to stay out of it. However, the frustration was getting too much for him. Mayfield felt like he was being treated unfairly and just wanted to voice it out to someone who would listen. Unfortunately, it would be the news media, as he made the comment that the team's problems stemmed from Evernham being an absentee owner, and saying that the team's owner was distracted by a quote-unquote close personal relationship. The situation only got worse as Mayfield would argue with Aaron Crocker on how to race the Pocono track, as well as hand Ray Evernham a framed photo of his ex-wife during a race banquet. Both terrible decisions on Mayfield's part, but one that he made due to his frustration on the falling out that he was having with the team. It would all come down to a breaking point at the 2006 Brickyard 400 when Mayfield would be unexpectedly black flagged in the middle of the race. The team was ordered to park it by not NASCAR but Ray Evernham himself. Mayfield heard the news over the radio, got out of his car on pit road, and left. This would be the last day that Jerry Mayfield worked for Evernham Motorsports. 2007 through 2008 would be a tough time for Jeremy Mayfield as he bounced around multiple teams in the Cup Series. Jeremy felt like he was an outcast as he burned bridges with now 2 teams in NASCAR's top division. By the end of the 2008 season, nobody wanted to take a chance on the sport's new rebel, even though he was not ready to leave the sport yet. The 2009 season was quickly approaching, and Mayfield still didn't have an offer for the upcoming season. Jeremy Mayfield and his wife finally realized that if they wanted the dream to continue in NASCAR, that they were going to have to run the show themselves. In January of 2009, Jeremy announced that he would be attempting the full season with his self-owned team using the number 41 car. He would have All Sport as the primary sponsor and Tony Furr as his crew chief, the same crew chief that he ran with Kel Yarbrough Motorsports in the mid-90s. The Daytona 500 looked to be an impossible feat for the team to qualify. However, fate would be on the side of the team as Mayfield finished the Gatorade Duel in 9th place, qualifying for the biggest event of the season. The season started out great for the team, but it would still be an uphill battle as they still needed to qualify for every race they entered in. In the first 11 races, the team only made 5 events, a troubling number for sure, but there was still optimism within the team. They still had sponsorship, they were able to make the bigger events, and Mayfield was always excellent when it came to the bigger intermediate tracks. The 12th race of the season was the Coca-Cola 600, and the team was more focused than ever to qualify into the Crown Jewel event. Unfortunately, what came next would be the thing that many people knew Jerry Mayfield for to this day.
We just heard from Jim Hunter, Director of Communications for NASCAR. Let's hear what Hunter had to say.
Jeremy Mayfield, driver of the number 41 car in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. Tony Martin, a licensed crew member with the number 34 team in the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, had been indefinitely suspended from NASCAR for violating the sanctioning body's substance abuse policy.
On May 9, 2009, Jeremy Mayfield would be suspended indefinitely by NASCAR for violating NASCAR's substance abuse policy. The suspension came after Jeremy Mayfield was randomly drug tested a week prior. The test came back positive to, quote-unquote, a drug of concern, a vague statement that confused many in the garage area when it was announced. Mayfield admitted to taking Adderall and Claritin B for his attention deficit disorder, both prescribed over-the-counter medicine, but ones that still concerned the man who oversaw NASCAR's testing program, Dr. David Black. On June 9, 2009, it would be announced that the drug that Jeremy Mayfield tested positive for was methamphetamine, a potent central nervous system stimulant that is heavily addictive and illegally misused for recreational reasons. The news was shocking to many and one that infuriated the accused driver. Jeremy Mayfield wound up suing NASCAR for the situation, a move that everyone knew would ruin his career in NASCAR, but in Mayfield's eyes felt like the right decision. Everyone knew that Jeremy Mayfield was a rebel in the sport, and the one thing you can say about a rebel is that they don't back down from a fight, no matter how big the competition may be.
All right. Ding, ding.
In the coming months, Mayfield's trial started to expose a deeper problem that NASCAR had in implementing their testing program. Evidence of false positive tests, incorrect procedures, and lack of knowledge of the rules were quite evident throughout the drug testing process. Jeremy Mayfield would be granted a temporary injunction, but later drug tests, again conducted by Dr. David Black, tested positive again, even though Mayfield stated on Dirty Mo Media that he stopped taking Claritin and Adderall after the initial test. Something was off by the whole situation, and many did not know who were the ones lying. Was it Mayfield, a driver that got into trouble with multiple teams in the past, or NASCAR, a company that started to get more and more controversial as time went by? Regardless of who was lying at this point, the next few years for both parties would be an absolute nightmare. Nobody in the NASCAR garage trusted the new drug policy system that NASCAR was enforcing. The rules were so vague that many stopped taking prescribed medication in fear of testing positive on a questionable test. Drivers like Carl Edwards were vocal about the issues with the drug testing, as Claritin D was his primary sponsor in selected races, a drug that Jeremy Mayfield stated he was taking during the time of the test. The lack of trust with drivers and team was a big issue for the organization in itself, but that wasn't even the biggest issue that NASCAR was suffering from. During this time, the CEO of the company was Brian France, son of Bill France Jr. and grandson of Bill France Sr. His time in NASCAR was riddled with controversy, as it was under his leadership when the playoffs were introduced, as well as the Car of Tomorrow. However, his biggest flaws would come from his personal life, as his ex-wife joined forces with Jeremy Mayfield and testified against him in court, stating that Brian France was notorious for making things personal with drivers. Remember the Black Flag incident that happened in the 2006 Brickyard 400 event? Brian France's ex-wife brought this up, as it turned out that he may have played a role in having Mayfield be parked in the middle of the event. There were also multiple examples of Brian France pushing around his control, as well as suffering from personal drug problems himself. This became evident to the world after he would be arrested in 2018 after the Watkins Glen race for driving while intoxicated, as well as possession of oxycodone pills. After this incident, many fans believed that perhaps Jeremy Mayfield was innocent this whole time and that NASCAR had a vendetta out for Mayfield ever since he exposed Evernham's affair to the world. But even then, Jeremy Mayfield was not out of the woods either. During the trials, Lisa Mayfield, the widow of Mayfield's father, stated that she witnessed Jeremy Mayfield use methamphetamines many times since 1998. However, the statement started to seem false, as Lisa would get arrested later after she trespassed Mayfield's property and assaulted people while she was there, leading to her withdrawing the claims concerning the ex-NASCAR driver. Mayfield got in trouble with the law multiple times after the 2009 incident. In April of 2011, Mayfield would be back in the headline news after a mail carrier was attacked by Mayfield's 5 dogs while delivering a package to his residence. The carrier received minor injuries, resulting in Jeremy Mayfield having to pay $1 million in the lawsuit after failing to respond to it. The story would quickly be overshadowed in November, as Mayfield would be arrested after a raid happened at his home in Catawba. According to Jeremy Mayfield, there was an odd gentleman that came to his shop all the time and tried to sell them products of all types. Mayfield wanted nothing to do with the man and asked them to leave every time. One day, he showed up again and disappeared near the back of the shop without chatting to anyone. Moments later, law enforcement pulled up to the Mayfield's residence, stating that a search warrant was out to look for a metal plate. Police would go into the house and requested Mayfield to open his safe, where they reported to find $100,000 worth of stolen goods, guns, and 1.5 grams of meth residue on a plastic bag. Police asked if there was anyone that would be interested in this type of stuff, in which he responded in anger, the NASCAR garage. Mayfield would be charged with 28 different felonies. However, most would be thrown out by the year 2014, and Mayfield pled guilty to 2 counts of misdemeanor possession of stolen property and 1 count possession of drug paraphernalia in 2014. He would not be in trouble with the law ever again. To this day, Jeremy Mayfield still holds his innocence that he never used methamphetamine in his lifetime. He also believes that NASCAR had a personal issue with him, as he upset a few people in the sport and was never afraid to voice his opinion. If you want my honest truth, there are no winners or good guys in this situation. Dr. David Black seemed like he was not the best person to oversee the NASCAR testing program. He never gave straight answers on what was legal or illegal in the sport, and seemed to be judging Mayfield before tests were even conducted. Brian France had his own problems with drugs and ran the sport of NASCAR in a highly unprofessional manner. And Jeremy Mayfield was, well, a rebel that fought everything to the bitter end. I believe Jeremy Mayfield in some areas of this whole ordeal, while other parts I find a hard time to be true. At one point, he still said he was taking Adderall for his second drug test, even though he admitted on the Dirty Mo Media that he was off of it months before. He stated that the police raided his whole home for 1 piece of sheet metal, a statement that I find highly suspicious, as why would they have a whole search party go through his safe and ask him to look at a list of potential drug users and sellers and call them? And if NASCAR was involved in the search like he hints, how were they able to convince a sheriff's department in another state to ruin this man's reputation in a planted drug sting operation, but not be able to have the police in a different state to not arrest their own CEO? And lastly, why would he plead guilty to 2 misdemeanors that he said he was innocent of while spending millions of dollars and refused to go through NASCAR's Road to Recovery program, since he knew he never failed for methamphetamine? Honestly, the only one who knows the whole truth is Mayfield himself. Whether he is telling us the truth is for us to decide. Which leads to our final 2 questions. Did Jeremy Mayfield's actions damage his career and credibility, and where does he fit on our alignment chart? To be honest, whether you believe he is innocent or not, yes, Jeremy Mayfield's actions did end his career. His selfishness and stubbornness is what led him to victories, as well as being a good leader in whichever shop he was a part of. However, he damaged a lot of relationships along the way. Whether it was right or not, it still played a factor in his downfall. As for the alignment chart, there is no mistaking that he is a rebel, but is he considered more good or evil? To this day, there is no clear-cut answer to whether Mayfield was an innocent man or not, and because of that, it is best to leave him at neutral rebel. Jeremy Mayfield never played to one side. He always looked out for what he felt was the right thing to do for himself, and many respected him in that nature. Perhaps we will never know if what all he did was good or evil, but one thing is for certain: if there was a true rebel in the sport of NASCAR, then his name was Jeremy Mayfield.